The wooden spoon slipped from Martha's fingers for the third time that morning, clattering against the cast iron pot with a sound that made every cowboy in the bunkhouse look up from their coffee. She was 52 years old, and the world had begun shrinking into a blur of shadows and shapes that refused to hold their edges no matter how hard she squinted. The Broken Arrow Ranch in western Texas had been her home since 1873, and now in the summer of 1891 she could barely see the difference between salt and sugar without holding the containers inches from her face. "Damn it all," Martha muttered, fishing the spoon from the bubbling stew. Her hands found it by memory more than sight. The steam rising in white clouds that looked like ghosts in her failing vision. "You all right there, Miss Martha?" The voice belonged to Cole Davidson, 26 years old, and lean as a whip from 10 years of riding fence lines and breaking horses. He stood in the doorway of the cookhouse, hat in his hands, his dark hair stuck to his forehead with sweat from the morning's work. Martha could make out his silhouette, tall and broad-shouldered, but his features had become soft around the edges like a photograph left too long in the sun. "Fine as frog's hair," she lied, turning back to the stove. "Just clumsy today." Cole stepped inside, and she heard his boots against the planked floor. He had been watching her struggle for weeks now, seen her burn the biscuits twice, oversalt the beans, nearly slice her finger clean through when cutting vegetables. The other ranch hands made jokes about Martha losing her touch, but Cole saw something different. He saw fear in the rigid set of her shoulders, heard it in the way her voice got sharp when someone asked if she needed help. "I was thinking," Cole said slowly, setting his hat on the long wooden table where the men ate their meals. "My mama used to make a stew that could cure about anything that ailed you. Always wanted to learn how to make it proper." Martha turned toward him, her gray eyes struggling to focus. "You want cooking lessons?" "Yes, ma'am. Figure it might come in handy someday. Man ought to know his way around a kitchen, not just a saddle." It was a lie, and they both knew it. Cowboys did not ask for cooking lessons. They ate what was put in front of them and thanked God it was hot. But Martha heard something in his voice, a gentleness that made her throat tight. "I suppose I could teach you a thing or two," she said carefully, "if you're serious about it." "Dead serious," Cole replied. That was how it started. The next morning, Cole arrived at the cookhouse an hour before dawn, when the sky was still black and studded with stars that Martha could no longer see individually. They had become a wash of white light, beautiful but indistinct. Cole lit the lamps and started the fire in the stove, and Martha began to teach him. "Biscuits are about feel more than measure," she said, her hands in the flour and lard mixture. "You want it to come together like this, see? Not too wet, not too dry." Cole stood beside her, his hands working the dough in a separate bowl. His fingers were clumsy at first, more used to rope and reins than delicate work. "Like this?" Martha reached over, her hands covering his, feeling the texture of what he had made. "A bit more flour. You will know it is right when it stops sticking to your fingers but still feels soft." He added more flour, worked it in, and Martha checked again. "That's it. That is exactly right." They worked in silence for a while, cutting out the biscuits and placing them in the Dutch oven. Cole snuck glances at Martha when she was not looking, seeing how she held things close to her face, how she felt her way around the kitchen more than looked. She was a handsome woman despite her age, with strong features and silver hair she kept pinned back in a practical bun. There were lines around her eyes from years of smiling, though she did not smile much these days. "How long have you been having trouble seeing?" Cole asked quietly. Martha's hands stilled. For a long moment she did not answer. Then she sighed, her shoulders sagging. "Started about 6 months back. Thought maybe I just needed spectacles, but the doc in town said it is my age. Said it will keep getting worse until there is nothing left but darkness." The words hung in the air between them, heavy as stones. Cole felt something twist in his chest, an ache he could not quite name. "I'm sorry, Martha." "Do not be sorry. Be useful." Her voice was sharp again, defensive. If you are going to be here taking up space in my kitchen, you best pay attention. The bacon needs to be started, and those eggs will not crack themselves." Cole smiled despite himself. "Yes, ma'am." The days fell into a pattern. Cole worked the ranch from dawn until mid-morning, then came to the cookhouse to help Martha prepare the noon meal. He learned how to judge the heat of the stove by holding his hand above it, counting seconds. He learned the difference between a simmer and a boil, how to tell when meat was done by pressing on it with his finger, how to make gravy without lumps by stirring constantly and adding liquid slowly. Martha was a tough teacher, quick to correct and slow to praise, but Cole learned fast. He had good hands, steady and sure once he understood what needed doing. More importantly, he had patience. When Martha knocked over the milk or could not find the knife she had just set down, Cole simply cleaned up the spill or placed the knife back in her hand without comment. The other ranch hands noticed, of course. Cowboy saw everything and talked about most of it. "Davidson's gone soft," said Tommy Reeves, a bow-legged rider from Oklahoma, playing nursemaid to the cook. "Leave him be," countered Frank Martinez, the ranch foreman. Frank was 40 years old and had been at Broken Arrow longer than anyone except Martha. "Man wants to help an old friend, that is his business." But it was more than friendship, though Cole would not have admitted it out loud. He found himself thinking about Martha at odd moments during the day, wondering if she was managing all right, worrying that she might hurt herself when he was not there. He started staying longer at the cookhouse, helping with supper as well as the noon meal, then staying to clean up afterward while Martha sat and rested her eyes. They talked during those long hours together. Martha told him about growing up in Missouri, about coming west after the war with a husband who died of cholera 6 months later. She told him about learning to cook for ranch crews, about the cattle drives and the hard winters, about the time Comanche raiders came through, and she hid in the root cellar for 2 days. Cole told her about his own family, about growing up poor in Tennessee, about his father dying in a mine collapse when Cole was 16. He told her about coming to Texas to make something of himself, about the loneliness of the cowboy life, always moving, never quite belonging anywhere. "You belong here," Martha said one evening as they washed dishes together. She could not see well enough to know if they were truly clean. So Cole washed and she dried, her hands learning each plate and cup by touch. "Do I?" Cole asked. "You are here, are you not? And you are doing good work. That is belonging enough for most folks." Cole was quiet for a moment, then said, "What about you? Do you feel like you belong?" Martha's hands stilled on the plate she was drying. "I did once. Now I feel like I'm waiting to be put out to pasture like an old horse that cannot work anymore." "That is not going to happen," Cole said fiercely. "You hear me, Martha? That is not going to happen." She turned toward him, and even though he knew she could not see him clearly, he felt the weight of her gaze. "You cannot stop time, Cole. You cannot stop age." "No," he agreed, "but I can make sure you are not alone through it." Something shifted between them in that moment, something neither of them had words for. Martha felt it in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the heat of the stove. Cole felt it in the way his heart beat faster, the way he wanted to reach out and take her hand but did not quite dare. Summer deepened into August, and the heat pressed down on the ranch like a physical weight. The cattle grew restless, and the cowboy spent long days riding the range, making sure the water holes had not dried up. Cole still came to the cookhouse every day, though he was often exhausted from the extra work. "You do not have to do this," Martha told him one afternoon. They were making bread, their hands working the dough in a rhythm they had perfected over the past months. "You need your rest." "I need this more," Cole said simply. Martha's hands stopped moving. "Why?" It was the question Cole had been avoiding, the one he asked himself late at night when he lay in his bunk and stared at the ceiling. Why did he spend every spare moment with a woman who was 26 years older than him? Why did his heart lift every time he heard her voice? Why did the thought of her facing her blindness alone make him feel like something was tearing inside his chest? "Because," he said slowly, carefully, I care about you, Martha, more than I probably should." The silence stretched out so long that Cole thought maybe he had made a terrible mistake. Then Martha said, very quietly, "I am an old woman, Cole. You should not waste your caring on me." "You are not old," Cole said, "and even if you were, it would not matter. You are strong and smart and funny when you let yourself be. You have taught me more in these past months than just cooking. You have taught me about resilience, about facing hard things with dignity, about not giving up even when everything seems impossible." Martha's vision had blurred even more, but now it was not just from age. Tears were gathering in her eyes, hot and unexpected. "I am going blind, Cole. Blind. Do you understand what that means? I will be useless. A burden." "You could never be a burden," Cole said. He did something then that surprised both of them. He took her flour-dusted hands in his. "Let me be here for you. Let me help you through this." "Why?" Martha whispered. "Because I am falling in love with you," Cole said. The words came out rough, unpracticed, but absolutely true. "I think maybe I have been for a while now." Martha pulled her hands away, turning back to the bread dough. Her heart was hammering in her chest, and she felt dizzy. "You do not know what you are saying. You are young. You should be courting some pretty girl your own age, not wasting time with a half-blind cook." "I am 26 years old, Martha. I am not a boy, and I know my own heart." Cole moved to stand beside her, not touching but close enough that she could feel his presence. "I'm not asking you for anything you are not ready to give. I'm just asking you to let me stay. Let me learn your recipes. Let me be here." Martha's hands trembled as she shaped the dough into loaves. She wanted to say yes so badly it scared her. She wanted to lean into him, to let herself believe that someone could love her even as her sight failed and her usefulness diminished, but she was also terrified. "I do not know if I can do that," she said finally. "I do not know if I can let myself depend on someone again." "Then do not depend on me," Cole said. "We will depend on each other. You teach me to cook, and I will be your eyes when you need them. Fair trade." Despite herself, Martha smiled. "You drive a hard bargain, Cowboy." "I learned from the best," Cole replied. They fell back into their work, but something had changed. The air between them felt charged, full of possibilities and fears in equal measure. When their hands brushed as they reached for the same mixing bowl, neither pulled away quickly. When Cole described the color of the sunset to Martha that evening, painting it in words so she could see it in her mind, she listened with her eyes closed and let herself imagine what it might be like to have him describe sunsets to her for years to come. September brought cooler weather and the preparation for the fall cattle drive to market. The ranch would be operating with a skeleton crew for 3 weeks, while most of the cowboys drove 500 head of cattle to the railhead in Abilene. Cole was expected to go, as were most of the able-bodied riders. "I am staying behind," Cole told Frank Martinez a week before the drive was scheduled to begin. Frank looked at him with shrewd eyes. "Martha can manage for 3 weeks. She has done it before." "Not like this," Cole said. "Not with her vision as bad as it is now." "You are putting your job at risk, son. Mr. Hutchinson expects every man to pull his weight, especially during the drives." "I know," Cole said, "but I am staying anyway." Frank studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You are in love with her?" It was not a question, but Cole answered anyway. "Yes, sir, I am." "She is a good woman," Frank said. "Been through hell and come out the other side still standing, but she is proud, Cole. She will not like feeling like a burden." "I know," Cole said again, "but I am staying anyway." Frank clapped him on the shoulder. "I will talk to Mr. Hutchinson. We can spare one man, but you best make yourself useful around here while we are gone." When Martha found out that Cole was not going on the drive, she was furious. "You told them you were staying because of me. Did you not?" "I told them I was staying because I wanted to," Cole said calmly. They were in the cookhouse, preparing supper for the few men who would remain at the ranch. "What I do with my job is my business." "It will not be your job much longer if you keep this up," Martha snapped. She was stirring a pot of stew with more force than necessary, her face flushed with anger and something else she did not want to name. Then I will find another job, Cole said, one closer to town where I can work and still be here to help you. I do not need help, Martha said, but her voice broke on the last word. Cole crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and caught her hand, stilling the spoon before she could wear a hole in the pot. Yes, you do. And that is all right. Everyone needs help sometimes. Martha's breath was coming fast and she could feel the tears threatening again. I am so scared, Cole. I am scared of the dark that is coming. I am scared of being useless. I am scared that everyone will see me as pathetic. I see you as brave, Cole said softly. I see you getting up every morning and doing the work even though it gets harder every day. I see you refusing to give up or feel sorry for yourself. That is not pathetic, Martha. That is the strongest thing I have ever seen. Martha turned toward him, and even though she could not see his face clearly anymore, she knew what she would find there. Sincerity, kindness, and something that looked an awful lot like love. What are we doing, Cole? What is this between us? I do not know, he admitted, but I want to find out, if you will let me. Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I am afraid of loving you. I am afraid too, Cole said, but I think I'm more afraid of not trying. Martha took a shaky breath, then reached up with her free hand to touch his face. Her fingers traced his features, learning the shape of his jaw, the angle of his cheekbones, the curve of his mouth. It was how she would have to learn to see from now on through touch instead of sight. You are a good man, Cole Davidson, she said. You make me want to be, he replied. The cattle drive left the next week, 20 cowboys and 500 head of cattle heading northeast in a cloud of dust and bellowing. Cole stood in the yard with Martha and waved them off, then turned to face 3 weeks of ranch work with only 4 other men to help maintain the place. They were good weeks, despite the hard work. Cole and Martha fell into an even deeper rhythm. Their days intertwined from before sunrise until after dark. Cole learned to make Martha's famous apple pie, her beef stew that could stick to a man's ribs through a long day's work, her light-as-air biscuits that the cowboys fought over. More importantly, he learned to be her partner in ways that went beyond cooking. When Martha could not see to mend a torn apron, Cole threaded the needle and placed it in her hand, then described the tear so she could feel where to stitch. When she stumbled over a loose board in the cookhouse, Cole fixed it that same afternoon and then went through the entire building making sure there were no other hazards. When Martha admitted she could no longer read the labels on the spice jars, Cole spent an evening marking each one with raised letters he carved into small wooden tags. You do not have to do all this, Martha said, running her fingers over the tags. She could feel the care that had gone into each letter, the time it must have taken. I want to, Cole said. Besides, it helps me too. Now I can find the cinnamon without asking you every time. Martha laughed, a sound that had become more common in recent weeks. You are a terrible liar, Cole Davidson. Yes, ma'am, he agreed, grinning. They were sitting on the porch of the cookhouse, watching the sunset. At least Cole was watching it. Martha was listening to him describe it, the way the sky turned from blue to pink to gold to purple, the way the clouds caught fire along their edges, the way the land seemed to glow in the last light of day. I wish I could see it, Martha said softly. You are seeing it, Cole said, just in a different way. Martha turned toward him, her expression serious. Do you really not mind? The blindness? The fact that I will need more and more help as time goes on? Martha, Cole said, taking her hand, I mind that you are scared. I mind that you are going through something difficult. But I do not mind being the person who helps you through it. In fact, I cannot imagine wanting to be anywhere else. You should be out riding, living your life, not tied to a blind woman. I am living my life, Cole said firmly. This is the life I want. Here, with you. Martha squeezed his hand, And they sat in silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon and the stars began to emerge. Martha could not see them anymore, but Cole described them for her, turning the night sky into a story that she could hold in her mind. "There is the Big Dipper," he said, "and if you follow the edge of the cup upward, you find the North Star. My daddy taught me that when I was little. Said a man who could read the stars would never be truly lost." "Are you lost, Cole?" Martha asked. "Not anymore," he said. The cattle drive returned 3 weeks later, the cowboys sunburned and trail-worn but satisfied with the prices they had gotten for the herd. They were also surprised to find the ranch in perfect order and supper waiting for them when they rode in. "Martha's biscuits are still the best I've ever eaten," Tommy Reeves declared, reaching for his third one. Frank Martinez caught Cole's eye across the table and gave him a small nod of approval. Cole had more than pulled his weight during the drive's absence, maintaining fences, tending to the remaining livestock, and keeping the place running smoothly, all while making sure Martha never faced her kitchen alone. That night, after the men had eaten their fill and wandered off to the bunkhouse, Frank pulled Cole aside. "Mr. Hutchinson wants to see you tomorrow morning." Cole felt his stomach drop. "Am I being let go?" "You will have to talk to him to find out," Frank said, but there was a glint in his eye that suggested he knew more than he was saying. Cole barely slept that night, running through arguments in his head about why he should be allowed to stay, what he would do if he was fired, how he would tell Martha. But when he walked into the ranch house the next morning, Mr. Hutchinson was smiling. "Sit down, Davidson," the ranch owner said. He was a barrel-chested man in his 60s with a silver mustache and keen blue eyes. "Frank tells me you did good work while we were gone." "I did my best, sir," Cole said carefully. "He also tells me you have been helping Martha in the kitchen, learning to cook." Cole waited for the other shoe to drop, for the dismissal he was certain was coming. "That is good thinking," Mr. Hutchinson continued. "Martha has been with this ranch for 18 years. She is family. But I have been worried about her with her eyes going bad, been trying to figure out what to do." "She can still work," Cole said quickly. "She just needs some help, that is all." "I agree," Mr. Hutchinson said, "which is why I am offering you a new position. I want you to be the official assistant cook. You will still help with ranch work when needed, but your primary job will be working with Martha. Same pay, but you will live in the small cabin behind the cookhouse instead of the bunkhouse. It will give you more space and be closer to the kitchen." Cole stared at him, not quite believing what he was hearing. "You want to pay me to cook?" "I want to pay you to make sure this ranch continues to be fed properly, Mr. Hutchinson corrected. "Martha knows every recipe in her head, and if something happens to her without someone else learning them, we would be in a bad way. You are doing the smart thing, preserving that knowledge. That is worth paying for." "Thank you, sir," Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. "You do not know what this means." "I think I do," Mr. Hutchinson said kindly. "Frank also tells me there might be something more than cooking going on between you and Martha." Cole felt his face heat. "I care about her, sir, a great deal." "Good," Mr. Hutchinson said. "She deserves someone who cares about her. Just make sure whatever happens between you two does not interfere with getting my men fed on time." "It would not, sir, I promise you that." "Then we have a deal. You can move into the cabin this week." Cole practically ran back to the cookhouse to tell Martha the news. She was standing at the stove, stirring oatmeal for the breakfast, her head tilted in concentration as she listened to the sound of the bubbling pot. "Cole," she said when she heard him come in, "you were back early. How did it go?" "I am the new assistant cook," Cole said, unable to keep the grin out of his voice. Mr. Hutchinson is making it official." Martha's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and then something that looked like joy before settling into concern. "He is doing this because of me, because I cannot manage alone anymore. He is doing it because it is smart business," Cole said, crossing to her side, "and because he values you. We all do, Martha." "What about the cabin? Did he say anything about living arrangements?" "I am moving into the cabin behind the cookhouse," Cole said. Then, because he could not help himself, he added, "Of course, it would be even more practical if we shared the cabin, save the ranch some resources." Martha's hands stilled on the spoon. "Cole Davidson, are you proposing to me over a pot of oatmeal?" Would you say yes if I was? Cole asked, his heart hammering. Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Ask me properly." Cole took her hand, gently moving her away from the stove. He knelt down on one knee on the worn wooden floor of the cookhouse and looked up at her. She could not see his face clearly, but she could feel his presence, solid and real and absolutely certain. "Martha Green," he said, "I know this is not how things are usually done. I know people will talk about the difference in our ages, about me being a cowboy and you being the cook, about you losing your sight, but I do not care about any of that. I love you. I love your strength and your stubbornness and the way you make biscuits and the sound of your laugh. I love how you face every day with courage even when you are scared. I want to be the person who describes sunsets to you for the rest of our lives. I want to cook beside you and sleep beside you and grow old beside you. Will you marry me?" Martha felt the tears streaming down her face, hot and fast. Her hands found his face, traced the lines of it, memorizing this moment even though she could not see it. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Cole, I will marry you." Cole stood and pulled her into his arms, and Martha buried her face against his chest. She could feel his heart beating fast, could feel his arms tight around her. And for the first time since her vision started failing, she did not feel afraid of the darkness ahead. "I love you," she said, the words muffled against his shirt. "I did not think I would ever say that to anyone again, but I love you, Cole Davidson." "I love you too," he said, and kissed the top of her head. They were married 3 weeks later in the small church in town. It was a simple ceremony, with the ranch hands in attendance, Frank Martinez standing up as Cole's best man, and Mrs. Hutchinson sitting beside Martha in place of family. The minister asked if anyone objected to the union, and the church remained silent except for the sound of spurs jingling as the cowboys shifted in their pews. When Cole kissed his bride, the cowboys cheered and whistled, and Martha laughed through her tears. She could not see the faces of the people around her, but she could feel their goodwill, their happiness for her and Cole. It filled her heart in a way she had not expected. They moved into the cabin together, and Cole spent the first week making it suitable for Martha's needs. He arranged the furniture so she could navigate easily, put everything in specific places so she would always know where to find what she needed, and installed a rope railing along the path between the cabin and the cookhouse so Martha could walk it safely on her own. "You have thought of everything," Martha said, running her hands along the rope railing. "I have tried," Cole said, "but you tell me if there is anything else you need. This is your home too." "Our home," Martha corrected, and Cole smiled. Life settled into a new normal. They woke before dawn and walked together to the cookhouse, Cole describing the morning sky and Martha listening with her hand tucked into his elbow. They cooked side by side, their movements synchronized like a dance they had been practicing for years. When Martha could not see to chop vegetables, Cole did it while describing what he was doing so she could add her guidance. When Cole could not remember the exact proportions for a spice mixture, Martha's hands would dip into the containers and measure by touch, her senses sharpened by necessity. The cowboys noticed the change in Martha. She smiled more, laughed more, moved with more confidence even as her vision continued to fade. She no longer seemed like someone waiting for the end, but rather someone living fully in each day. And Cole seemed to grow into himself in new ways, becoming more patient, more thoughtful, more grounded. "Never thought I would see Davidson settle down," Tommy Reeves said one evening at supper, "but I have to say marriage suits him." "Suits them both," Frank Martinez agreed, watching as Cole and Martha worked together at the serving line, their hands brushing with casual intimacy as they passed plates back and forth. Winter came, and with it the hardest months for the ranch. The cattle had to be fed hay, the water troughs kept from freezing, and the men needed hot, filling meals to sustain them through long days in the cold. Cole and Martha worked longer hours, starting fires while the stars were still bright overhead and banking them late at night when the moon was high. "I am tired," Martha admitted one evening as they walked back to the cabin. Her hands were red and chapped from washing dishes in cold water, and her back ached from standing all day. I know, Cole said, his arm around her waist to steady her on the icy path. But you did good work today. Those men were warmed from the inside out by your cooking. Our cooking, Martha said. I could not do it without you anymore, Cole. You know that, do not you? We are a team, Cole said simply. That is how marriage works, I figure. Two people being stronger together than either one could be alone. When they reached the cabin, Cole built up the fire while Martha sank gratefully into her rocking chair. He brought her a cup of hot tea and knelt to remove her worn boots, massaging her tired feet until she sighed with relief. You spoil me, Martha said. You deserve spoiling, Cole replied. That night, as they lay in bed with the wind howling outside and the fire crackling in the hearth, Martha said, I cannot see your face anymore, not even when you're this close. Cole felt the words like a knife, not because they hurt him, but because he knew what it must have cost her to admit it. Tell me what you need, he said. Just talk to me, Martha said. Tell me what you look like. I want to remember, even if I cannot see. So Cole did. He described his dark hair that was always a bit too long, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the scar on his chin from falling off a horse when he was learning to ride. He described the calluses on his hands and the way his shoulders had broadened from years of ranch work. And Martha listened, her fingers tracing the features he described, building a picture in her mind that would last long after the visual memory faded. You are beautiful to me, she said when he finished. You're beautiful to me too, Cole said, and that will never change, Martha. Not ever. Spring arrived with a rush of green grass and wildflowers, and Martha's world narrowed to light and shadow. She could still tell day from night, could sense movement and shape. But details were gone entirely. She had fully accepted her blindness by then, learning to navigate her world through sound and touch and smell. The kitchen became her domain in new ways, her hands knowing every pot and pan, every shelf and drawer, every inch of space. Cole watched her with awe and love in equal measure. She never complained, never asked for pity, never stopped working. When she burned herself on the stove because she misjudged the distance, she simply ran her hand under cool water and got back to work. When she knocked over a jar of preserves, she cleaned it up without fuss and made a note to be more careful. She was, Cole thought, the strongest person he had ever known. In May, Martha realized she had missed her monthly courses. She was 53 years old and had long assumed that part of her life was over, but when the doctor in town examined her, he confirmed what she had barely dared to hope. You are with child, Mrs. Davidson, he said. About 3 months along, near as I can tell. Martha sat in stunned silence, her hands pressed to her stomach. A baby. At her age. She had never had children with her first husband, had assumed she was barren, and now, blind and in her 50s, she was going to be a mother. Is it safe? She asked. For me, for the baby? It is not without risks, the doctor admitted. Women your age do not usually bear children, but you are healthy and strong. If you take care of yourself, I see no reason why you cannot carry to term. Martha walked out of the doctor's office in a daze. Cole was waiting for her with the wagon, and she climbed up beside him without speaking. What did he say? Cole asked, concern in his voice. Is everything all right? I am pregnant, Martha said. The words still not quite real. Cole's hands froze on the reins. You are what? Pregnant? With child? Going to have a baby? Martha turned toward him, toward the blur that was his face. Cole, I am going to have a baby. Cole let out a whoop that startled the horses and pulled Martha into his arms right there in the middle of town. We are going to have a baby, he said, correcting her. We, Martha, you and me together. Are you happy? Martha asked, suddenly uncertain. I know this is not what you expected when you married a woman my age. Happy? Cole pulled back to look at her, wishing she could see his face. Martha, I am beyond happy. I am overjoyed, terrified, but overjoyed. Martha laughed, the sound shaky but genuine. I am terrified too. I am blind and old, and I have no idea how to be a mother. You are not old, Cole said firmly, and we will figure out the rest together just like we figure out everything else. The pregnancy was not easy. Martha's body ached in new ways, and the morning sickness lasted well into her 5th month. But Cole was beside her through all of it, holding her hair when she was sick, rubbing her back when it hurt, taking over more of the cooking when standing became too difficult. The ranch hands rallied around them too. Tommy Reeves built a special stool for Martha so she could sit while working at the counter. Frank Martinez made sure Cole had lighter duties so he could spend more time helping in the kitchen. Even Mr. Hutchinson stopped by the cookhouse regularly to check on Martha and make sure she had everything she needed. "You have become quite precious to this ranch, Martha," Mr. Hutchinson said one afternoon. "We all want to make sure you and that baby are well cared for." "Thank you," Martha said, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything. For letting Cole help me, for the job, for understanding about the baby." "Family takes care of family, mister," Hutchinson said simply. "And you are family here." As Martha's belly grew, Cole found himself even more protective of her. He barely let her lift anything heavy, was constantly worried about her tripping or falling, drove her to distraction with his hovering. "Cole Davidson, if you ask me one more time if I am all right, I am going to hit you with this wooden spoon," Martha threatened one afternoon. "I just worry," Cole said. "You cannot see where you are going, and you are carrying our child. I am allowed to worry." Martha's expression softened. She reached out, found his hand, and placed it on her swollen belly. "Feel that? That is your son or daughter, strong and healthy and growing just fine. We are both going to be fine, Cole. You have to trust that." Cole felt the movement under his palm, the flutter of new life, and felt his eyes sting with tears. "I love you so much," he said, "both of you." "We love you too," Martha said. The baby came on a cold December morning in 1892, 3 weeks before Christmas. Martha's labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Cole thought he might lose both his wife and child. He sat beside her bed holding her hand, praying to a God he was not sure he believed in, making desperate bargains in his head. But Martha was as strong in labor as she was in everything else. When the baby finally arrived, slippery and squalling, the midwife placed the child in Martha's arms and said, "You have a son, Mrs. Davidson, a healthy, perfect son." Martha held the baby close, her hands exploring the tiny face, the miniature fingers and toes, the soft fuzz of hair on his head. "Cole," she said, "describe him to me. I want to know what he looks like." Cole moved closer, his voice choked with emotion. "He has dark hair like me, and your nose, I think. He has all his fingers and toes. He is perfect, Martha, absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Martha asked. Cole thought for a moment, then said, "How about William? Will for short. It was my daddy's name." "William Davidson," Martha said, testing the name. "I like it. Hello, William. I am your mama." The baby made a small sound, and Martha felt her heart expand in ways she had not known were possible. She was blind and exhausted, and every muscle in her body hurt, but she had never been happier. "Thank you," Cole said, kissing her forehead. "Thank you for giving me this, for giving us this." "Thank you for learning to cook," Martha said, smiling through her tears. "Look where it got us." The first months of William's life were chaotic and exhausting. Martha learned to care for the baby by touch, changing diapers and bathing him and nursing him without being able to see what she was doing. Cole helped with everything, taking night feedings when William would accept a bottle, walking the floor with the baby when he was fussy, doing laundry and cooking and cleaning so Martha could rest. The ranch hands became unexpected uncles to baby William. Tommy Reeves carved him toys from scraps of wood. Frank Martinez taught him to laugh by making funny faces. Even Mr. Hutchinson stopped by regularly to hold the baby and tell Martha stories about his own children, long since grown. "You are a natural mother," Mrs. Hutchinson said one afternoon, watching as Martha expertly soothed a crying William. I never would have guessed you were doing all this blind." "You adapt," Martha said simply. "You learn to do what needs doing no matter the circumstances." As William grew, so did his parents' love for each other and their life together. Cole and Martha worked out systems for everything, ways of communicating and helping each other that became second nature. When Martha was cooking and needed something, Cole was there before she had to ask. When Cole was overwhelmed with ranch work and baby care, Martha found ways to help despite her blindness. William's first word was mama, but his second was pa, and Cole thought his heart might burst. They were a family, the three of them, bound together by love and necessity and choice. Years passed in a blur of seasons. William grew from baby to toddler to young boy, learning to navigate the world with a mother who could not see but seemed to know everything anyway. He learned to cook beside his parents, standing on a stool at the counter, his small hands mixing dough while Martha guided him by touch and Cole demonstrated by sight. "You are a natural, just like your mama," Cole told him one afternoon when William was 7 years old. "I want to be like both of you," William said seriously. "Mama's brave and you are kind." Martha, overhearing from across the kitchen, felt tears prick her eyes. She was completely blind now, had been for several years, but she had her family, her work, and a life that was fuller than she had ever imagined possible. In 1899, when Martha was 60 and Cole was 34 and William was 7, Mr. Hutchinson made an announcement. He was retiring and selling the Broken Arrow Ranch. The new owner wanted to bring in his own crew, which meant most of the cowboys would be let go. Cole and Martha faced the news with a mixture of sadness and determination. The ranch had been their home for so long, the place where they had met and fallen in love and built their life together, but they also knew that change was inevitable. "We will figure something out," Cole said that night as they lay in bed. "We always do." "I know," Martha said. "I'm not worried. As long as we are together, we will be fine." The solution came from an unexpected source. Frank Martinez, who had been saving his wages for years, had bought a small piece of land closer to town and wanted to start a restaurant. "I cannot cook worth a damn," he told Cole and Martha, "but I know 2 people who can. What do you say? Want to be partners?" Martha and Cole looked at each other, then at Frank. "You want us to run a restaurant?" Martha asked. "I want us to run a restaurant together," Frank corrected. "I will handle the business side and the serving. You two handle the food. We split the profits 3 ways." It was a risk, but it was also an opportunity. They talked it over for days, weighing the pros and cons, discussing what it would mean for William. In the end, they decided to take the chance. The restaurant opened in the spring of 1900, a small building on the main street of town with a hand-painted sign that read "The Broken Arrow Cafe" in honor of where they had all met. Martha and Cole cooked together in the kitchen just as they always had, their movements synchronized, their hands working in tandem. Frank greeted customers and served food and handled the money. Word spread quickly about the blind cook who made the best biscuits in Texas and the cowboy who had learned every recipe by heart. People came from miles around to eat at the Broken Arrow, drawn by the food but also by the story of the couple who ran it. "Tell us how you two met," customers would ask, and Cole would smile and say, "I needed to learn how to cook, and she needed someone to see for her. Turns out we needed each other in more ways than that." Martha would blush and swat at him with her dish towel, and the customers would laugh and order another piece of pie. The restaurant thrived. Within a year, they had hired 2 additional cooks to help with the volume. Within 2 years, they had paid off their initial investment and were turning a solid profit. Frank proved to be an excellent businessman, and Cole and Martha proved that good food and a good story could draw people in and keep them coming back. William grew up in the restaurant, learning the business from the ground up. He inherited his mother's palate and his father's steady hands, but more than that, he inherited their work ethic and their belief that family came first. When William was 16, a girl named Sarah started coming to the restaurant regularly. She was the daughter of a local banker, pretty and smart and kind. William was smitten, and it showed. "You should ask her to the dance," Martha said one afternoon. She was 68 now, her hair completely white, her face lined with years of smiling. She could not see, but she could hear the way William's voice changed when Sarah was nearby. "What if she says no?" William asked. "Then she says no," Cole said, coming to stand beside his wife. "But you will never know if you do not ask." William asked, and Sarah said yes, and Cole and Martha smiled at each other across the kitchen. They knew young love when they saw it, even if one of them was seeing it only through memory and sound. More years passed, good years full of hard work and laughter and love. The restaurant became a landmark in town, a place where people came not just for food, but for community. Martha, now in her 70s, had slowed down but never stopped working. She still came to the kitchen every day, still made her biscuits, still offered advice and guidance to the younger cooks. Cole, now in his 50s, still described the world to Martha, still held her hand when they walked, still looked at her with the same love he had felt that day in the cookhouse, nearly 30 years earlier. His dark hair had gone silver at the temples, and his hands bore the scars of decades of work, but his love for Martha had never wavered. William married Sarah in 1908, and the following year they made Cole and Martha grandparents with the birth of a daughter they named Martha Jane, after her grandmother. Martha held the baby with the same gentle expertise she had used with William, her hands learning the tiny features, her heart expanding once again. "She is beautiful," Cole told her, describing the baby's features. "She has your nose and William's eyes and Sarah's smile." "A perfect combination," Martha said, smiling through happy tears. In 1910, on a warm spring evening, Cole and Martha sat on the porch of their small house behind the restaurant. They had retired from daily cooking the year before, turning the kitchen over to William and Sarah and the capable crew they had trained. But they still visited every day, still offered advice, still made their presence felt. "Do you remember the first day we cooked together?" Martha asked. She was 71 now, her body frail, but her spirit as strong as ever. "I remember thinking you were the most stubborn woman I had ever met," Cole said, taking her hand, "and the bravest." "I remember being terrified," Martha admitted, "of going blind, of being useless, of being alone." "You were never alone," Cole said, "not from that day forward." "No," Martha agreed, "I was not." "You gave me that, Cole. You gave me partnership and love and a life I never thought I could have." "You gave me purpose," Cole said. "You taught me that being strong does not mean doing everything alone. You taught me about resilience and adaptation and love that goes deeper than what you can see." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of the town settling down for the night. Inside the restaurant, they could hear William and Sarah closing up, their voices mixing with the clink of dishes and the scrape of chairs. "We did good, did we not?" Martha said. "With our life, with William, with everything?" "We did better than good," Cole said. "We did extraordinary." Martha leaned her head on his shoulder, and Cole wrapped his arm around her. They had been together for 19 years, had faced blindness and birth and business and 100 other challenges, but they had faced them together. Two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built a life that was more beautiful than either could have imagined. "I love you, Cole Davidson," Martha said. "I love you too, Martha Davidson," Cole replied. "Today and every day for the rest of our lives." Inside the restaurant, William looked out the window and saw his parents sitting together on the porch. He smiled, thinking about all the times he had seen them like that over the years, always together, always connected. He thought about the stories they had told him, about a cookhouse and a cowboy learning recipes and a woman going blind who found love instead of darkness. "Look at them," Sarah said, coming to stand beside him with little Martha Jane in her arms. "Still in love after all these years." "They taught me what love looks like," William said. "Not just the romance, but the everyday work of it, the choosing each other every single day." "That is what I want for us," Sarah said. "That is what we will have," William promised, and kissed her softly. Outside, the sun set over Texas, painting the sky in colors that Martha could not see but could feel in the warmth on her face and the beauty of Cole's description. The world had changed so much since that day in 1891 when a wooden spoon had clattered into a pot and started everything. But some things remained constant: love, partnership, and the knowledge that the best recipes were the ones shared with someone who mattered. Cole and Martha sat together until the stars came out, until the air grew cool and it was time to go inside. They stood slowly, their bodies protesting the movement, and walked hand in hand to their door. Tomorrow they would wake and go to the restaurant and see their son and daughter-in-law and granddaughter. They would taste the food and offer suggestions and tell stories to anyone who wanted to hear them. But tonight they were simply two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life out of recipes and resilience and love that went deeper than sight. They had started in a cookhouse on a ranch that no longer existed, two people learning to work side by side, and they had ended up here with a family and a business and a love story that would be told for generations. Martha had been going blind from age, and Cole had learned every recipe and cooked beside her daily, but what they had really learned was how to see each other truly, how to love fully, and how to build a life that was richer than either had ever dreamed possible. And that, they both agreed, as they closed the door behind them and settled in for the night, was the best recipe of all.